Hello friends, myself Dr. Mukundraj Patil, late Ramesh Varapurkar, Art Commerce Science College, Solpet. Today we will discuss about the mechanism of opening and closing of the stomata. Before turning towards the mechanism of opening and closing of the stomata, just I want to explain that the structure and the difference between the inner wall of the guard cell and outer wall of the guard cell, it is a vital role in the opening and closing of the stomata. Another thing, the osmotic pressure of guard cell and mesophyll cell is very important one as far as opening and closing of the stomata is concerned, because osmosis is the physiological phenomenon which is responsible or very important as far as opening and closing of the stomata is concerned. Whenever endosmosis occurs in the guard cell, the cell gains water, it becomes turgid, and due to that, a turgor pressure gets created on the outer wall, and due to this turgor pressure, the stomata gets outer wall of the stomata is pulled out, and along with that, these inner walls of the guard cell also pulled away from each other, and the stomata becomes open. In contrast to that, when exosmosis occurs in the guard cell, the turgor pressure on the outer wall of guard cell, it reduces, and therefore the wall it moves inward. Along with that, this inner wall also gets pushed inside. Thus, they comes together and the stomata gets closed. In this way, osmosis is playing very vital role in the opening and closing of the stomata. But question arises that how this exosmosis or endosmosis occurs in the guard cell? Which are the factors responsible for change in the concentration of the guard cell or change in the osmotic pressure in the guard cell? And to explain that, different theories have been given by different scientists. First theory is starch-sugar hypothesis. This hypothesis, it states that an enzyme that is starch phosphorylase, it is catalyzing or it catalyzes a reversible reaction, that is conversion of starch into glucose 1-phosphate. And activity of this enzyme, it is determined by pH. When pH is high, it converts starch into the glucose 1-phosphate. Starch, it is insoluble in water, while glucose is soluble in water. And as this glucose 1-phosphate is soluble in water, conversion of starch into the glucose 1-phosphate, it increases osmotic pressure of the protoplasm, and therefore endosmosis occurs, and this endosmosis result into the increase in the turgor pressure of guard cells, and due increased turgor pressure, the pressure gets exerted on the outer wall of the guard cells, due to which this outer wall it is pushed outside or away from each other, which simultaneously exert pressure on the inner wall of guard cells, and it also gets pushed away from each other and stomata become open. All this it is happening at high pH, which is present during the daytime. Therefore, the stomata becomes open during the daytime. In contrast to that, during night, when pH is low in the guard cells, the reversible reaction occurs. That is, glucose 1 phosphate is converted into the starch. Therefore, the osmotic pressure in the guard cell it decreases, because starch is insoluble in protoplasm or water, and therefore the osmotic pressure it decreases, and due to that what happens, turgor pressure also decreases, and the outer wall of stomata it is pushed inside. Therefore, pressure on the inner wall of the guard cell also reduces, and they comes close to each other and resulting into the closing of stomata. In this way, according to starch-sugar hypothesis, the conversion of starch into the glucose 1 phosphate it is playing vital role in the change in osmotic pressure of the guard cell and ultimately in the opening and closing of the stomata. The next theory which was given to explain the opening and closing of the stomata is K plus ion exchange theory. According to this theory, during daytime, K plus ions enters inside the guard cell in exchange of H plus ions. These potassium ions they comes inside the guard cell, and hydrogen ions are given outside the guard cells. As electrical difference occurs, Cl minus ions or chlorine ions also enters inside the guard cell. At the same time, there is increase in the acid, that is the malic acid, and this malic acid it break into the malate ion and H plus ions, and these H plus ions are given out, and this malate it combines with this potassium ion, forming malate salt. And this process it results into the pH. At the same time, the accumulation of potassium ion, chlorine ion, it increases osmotic pressure of the guard cells, and therefore end osmosis occurs. The cells become turgid and stomata opens. The reverse reaction takes place during the night. The K plus ions or potassium ions, these are given outside the cell, and H plus ion it enters inside the cell, and there is a formation of malic acid, which therefore there is a decrease in the pH. At the same time, there is increase in the osmotic pressure, and due to which exosmosis occurs, and exosmosis in the guard cell result into the formation of flaccid cells, and due to which what happens, the inner wall it is pushed inside and the stomata gets closed. In this way, according to this K plus ion theory, potassium ions are playing vital role in the opening and closing of the stomata. Thank you.